Welcome back to this channel. I'm Parvati, a fluid dynamics student. So welcome back to this series where I introduce you to a concept or phenomenon related to fluid dynamics, and we see if we can weave a story out of it, because sometimes it helps us in remembering the important bits of a concept, or sometimes it helps us in not getting confused between two concepts, and most of the time because it makes learning a lot more fun. Today I will be talking to you about photochemical smog, which is a kind of air pollution you see in busy cities like New Delhi, Beijing, London, Los Angeles, and so on. It's slightly going to be more chemistry than fluid dynamics, which makes it even more interesting. So yeah, see you a bit. So what is smog? The word smog is a combination of the words smoke and fog. Photochemical smog is a set of complex chemical reactions involving sunlight, nitrogen oxides, and volatile organic compounds, also known as VOCs. The exhaust of vehicles basically emit nitrogen dioxide and nitric oxide, also known as nitrogen oxides or NOx. The brown color of smog that you see in cities is basically due to nitrogen dioxide. These compounds then react together to form ozone and secondary organic particles. Now, presence of ozone in the upper atmosphere or stratosphere is good because it protects us from the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. But ozone present in the lower atmosphere or troposphere, or also known as ground level ozone, is extremely bad for us because it can cause a variety of respiratory health problems, which is the case of photochemical smog. Okay, so now let's get to the chemistry part of the video. In a clean troposphere or lower atmosphere, by clean I mean away from pollution sources, so away from all the vehicles. So basically whatever pollution is there. We can form a simplified mechanism which determines the ozonic concentrations. So what happens is that NO2 absorbs sunlight and breaks down to form NO and oxygen radical or oxygen atom. These oxygen atoms then combine with oxygen molecules to form O3 or ozone as we know it. Now, ozone combines with nitric oxide to form nitrogen dioxide. So this is called a null cycle because there is no creation or removal of any components. Whatever components we started with, we ended up with the same stuff. However, cycles involving VOCs lead to a production of O3, which increases the concentration of ozone in the atmosphere. And this is basically independent of the null cycle. Now, near cities and sources of pollution, VOCs is something that lead to the increase in ozone concentration, as I just told. Now, one of the components of VOC is carbon monoxide, and carbon monoxide is one of the pathway for the increase in ozone concentration. Now, carbon monoxide is oxidized to form carbon dioxide and hydroperoxyl radical. This hydroperoxyl radical oxidizes nitric oxide to form nitrogen dioxide. Nitrogen dioxide can go and take part in the null cycle that I told you previously and basically form ozone. So overall, each carbon monoxide molecule is able to produce one molecule of ozone. From the null cycle, we understood that NO2 leads to the creation of ozone while NO leads in the destruction of ozone. Now, similar reactions might occur with other hydrocarbons, but the entire chemistry is much more complex. Okay, so now we have two factors which determine the concentration of ozone: the concentration of VOCs and the concentration of NOx or nitric oxide plus nitrogen dioxide. So this complex game between the concentration of VOCs and the concentration of NOx and its effect on the concentration of ozone is nicely depicted using this graph which is known as an ozone isoplane. Now this is a super interesting graph and forms the crux of the topic. This relatively simple graph is divided into two regions. The left side of the dotted line is called the VOC limited region, which is where VOC concentration is less, and the right side of the dotted line is called the NOx limited region, or where the NOx concentration is less. And on the vertical axis you have NOx concentration, and on the horizontal axis you have VOC concentration. Now let's concentrate on the VOC limited region. On the VOC limited region, decreasing VOC is favorable, meaning it will lead to a reduction in ozone concentrations. At the same time, decreasing NOx is unfavorable as it will lead to an increase in ozone concentration, which we do not want. Likewise, in the NOx limited region, we see that decreasing VOC is favorable, while changing NOx in any way, increasing it or decreasing it, pretty much does nothing to the ozone concentrations. Okay, so now that we have the ozone isoplane and everything as reference, let's imagine a situation. Suppose I am the mayor of a city and my job is to control the ozone concentrations in the central part of the city. Now see, the central part of the city means a lot of vehicles, and a lot of vehicles means you have a lot of NOx emissions, so that the region is VOC limited. Now, intuitively, I think like, okay, let me just restrict the number of vehicles during the day so that the NOx emission reduces. That way, we get to control ozone concentrations as well. I mean, intuitively, that seems right, but then I'd be very wrong. Even though this could lead to a decrease in the ozone levels in the downwind of the city, not the center of the city, in the center of the city, the levels are probably not going to change, or it might even increase if you look at the ozone isoclip graph. As we can see from the isoclip, if I actually reduce the concentration of NOx in a VOC limited region, my ozone concentrations are actually going to increase. Now, what I feel Fluid Dynamics is trying to tell me is very nicely put by Captain Jack Sparrow when he threatens to stab Davy Jones' heart in order to save Will Turner.
Ah, love, a dreadful bond, and yet so easily severed. Tell me, William Turner, do you fear death? Do you?
Eddie Tonic, holding life and death in the palm of one's hand.
You're a cruel man, Jack Sparrow.
Cruel is a matter of perspective.
Well, pretty much everything is a matter of perspective, right? Like in this case, by decreasing the concentration of NOx, you can actually increase or decrease ozone pollution depending on which region you are in. In other words, something that you find interesting or beautiful might not really appeal to me. I could find it dull or boring because I'm not exactly looking at it from your perspective, right? So maybe changing my perspective would help me see your point.
Savvy.
Now, if you find this topic interesting, a really good book you could refer to would be Urban Climate by OK, Mill, Kristen and Bo. So yeah, that was it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next week. Till then, take care. Bye bye.